Patrick Mahomes is named Offensive Player of the Week. And look, it was the Jets. So
I'm
like
glad
everyone,
you said it, so I don't have to
right,
say it. Exactly.
Yeah, nah, you can say it, but hey, like you said yesterday, what? You play who's in front of you,
Yeah,
right?
no, I'm not saying
And
that.
he ran roughshod over the Jets. He threw for 416 yards, I believe it was, 5 touchdowns, and that earned him Offensive Player of the Week. Here's the interesting thing, Rob. Patrick Mahomes, and we've said it, we just kind of tossed it out a few times this season. He hasn't had to put up the huge numbers, the 350-yard games every week and, things like that. And we've said he's playing well. Obviously, they're 7-1. He's not turning the ball over. They're routing teams. But he hasn't, he's played well, but hasn't been that Pat Mahomes from his first full season as a starter when he was the MVP. But here's the interesting thing, Rob. His numbers through 8 games are pretty much on par, pretty much with what he did that rookie, that second year in the league.
He has way
MVP.
less yards, doesn't he?
I
Like
wouldn't say way
yards?
less, but he had at that point in that season, he had 2,526 yards, so 2,526 yards. Now he's got 2,315. So he's 200 yards behind. Touchdowns, he had 26. He's got 21 now. Passer rating at that point in that year was 115.3. This year it's 115. And here's a few things where he's better. His completion percentage is higher, basically 67% to 65%. He's only got 1 interception, which is remarkable. 21 TDs, 1 pick. And he has 6 2 years ago. He's rushed for more yards, which obviously isn't a huge deal, but 165 to 119. And he's run for the same amount of touchdowns, which is 2. Here's what I'm thinking, though. Do you think, because the numbers are fairly close, you could certainly argue they were better 2 years ago. Obviously, he was in his first year as a starter. Do you think we're taking him for granted at all? Or because, he did these things in his first year as a starter 2 years ago, that's why we were so much more, amazed by it? Or, because here's my thing. He is second, according to Vegas, in the MVP voting. And
that's just odds. You got to remember, that's just odds.
Right. It's just odds, but yeah, I'm just saying. And so it doesn't feel like people are raving about him as much. Obviously, they recognize his greatness, but that people are raving about him as much as they were 2 years ago. You would think his numbers were a lot worse, but they're pretty much very similar. What do you think, the reason is, or do you even think we're not paying as much attention to him?
I think it's the eye test. It just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't look the same. In his 8 games, he's had 4 games of 2 touchdowns or less. Yes, he had the big 5 against the Jets, which obviously is huge, and he had a big day there. But he's had a couple, like 4 2-touchdown games and 1 touchdown game. He had a 1 touchdown game against Denver where they scored 43 points. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think people look at that and they're like, he had 200 yards. And then, Chris, you talk about his yards. He's had 211, 236, 225, 200. Those, you could say all the numbers are close. He's 200 less, 5 less touchdowns. But I'm just saying, on the eye test, he doesn't look like MVP. And you could tell me his numbers are close when he won it, but he doesn't feel like that to me. And it's not just Russell Wilson, who's played really well, despite not having a defense and put up some unbelievable numbers. I'm just talking about looking at it. I look at him. I've watched the games when he's played. I've seen the highlights. He's fine, but I don't think it's eye-popping like we first saw. And I think when you set the bar high and people just take a look at it, I think part of it is you can never duplicate that season, Chris. But the other part is this year, for whatever reason, it doesn't feel or look the same.
Yeah, I do think it's Russell Wilson. Now, is he as dynamic as he was that first year as a starter? I'll give you that. No. But I think part of that was we were so stunned. Like, this dude came out of no. Well, we knew who he was and we knew what he was supposed to be. But he had played one game his first year. So he burst onto the scene and it was ridiculous what he was doing. And so I think that was a factor. But I also think this, Rob, I think he would be MVP if Russell Wilson weren't having, to this point, obviously there's a whole full half a season left to play. We'll see what happens. But to this point, Russell Wilson is doing just unprecedented things. He's on pace with his 26 touchdowns in 7 games to break the NFL record for touchdown passes in the season, which is 55. He's averaging 307 yards a game passing. He's completing 71% of his passes. His rating is through the roof, passer rating. So I think, were it not for Russell Wilson, and we know his defense is horrible, and his backfield has been depleted a bit, his running game, and yet he still, week after week, is carrying this team. I think that is what has taken a little bit of our attention off of Pat Mahomes. I'll give you that. He's had several 200 some odd yards games where, he hasn't had to be that dynamic guy that he was a few years ago. But like I said, my vote, my MVP race, he's second right now. And Russell Wilson's first, he's second, Tom Brady's third. And so I still think he's got we'll see if Wilson can keep this up. But he's very much in the MVP race. And I think it's more just what Wilson's doing rather than what Pat Mahomes is not doing.
Yeah, I disagree. I don't think he's been as dynamic. He's got 3 or 4 200-yard games, 15 completions. It's fine, Chris. They win the game, but I don't think
290 yards a game.
I don't think. Yeah, but I'm saying I'm giving you. He had the big game against the Jets, and he had another big game against Baltimore. But there are like 3 or 4 just average games. And I don't think anybody, the only reason he entered the race was the 5 touchdown games against the Jets. But prior to that, he wasn't mentioned at all. It was the big Jets game that really changed the dynamics. And that's why he was Offensive Player of the Week. But I'm just watching. I don't think he's in the MVP race yet.
Really? So who's second?
I don't know, but I'm just talking about he doesn't jump out.
So nobody's in the race except Wilson.
He doesn't jump out to me like, oh yeah, he's having an MVP.
Would he be ahead of Brady?
Even if you give me the numbers, I haven't looked at everybody. I'm just saying he doesn't feel like the MVP this year. That's the eye test for me.
Watching it, I don't know what you watching because he's made some dynamic throws.
It's not about the throws, it's the numbers.
And he's got 4 games over 300 yards.
And he's got 4 games of 200.
He's thrown 1 pick.
And he's got 4 games of 200 or less, or 200 yards.
Yeah, but that's fine. So does Aaron Rodgers have plenty of games?
See, here you go. There it is. There's the buzzword.
Well,
I didn't bring up Aaron Rodgers, but here we go. This is Chris.
No, my point
We're talking about Patrick Mahomes.
And what are we
I
doing?
didn't bring him up. I did not bring him up. Can we just talk about Patrick Mahomes?
So hold on. Because we're talking about Patrick Mahomes, I can't bring up another player?
He's not even. We didn't even bring him up as being in the
Tom
race.
Brady
I'm asking you,
ago.
Why are you relating him to Aaron Rodgers?
Because I'm pointing out that several other players who are having great years have had 200-yard games too, multiple ones. That's what I'm pointing out. I brought up Tom Brady a minute ago. You didn't stop the presses and say, why are you bringing up Tom Brady?
I said I didn't look at Tom Brady's numbers to put him in to tell you. I'm telling you,
but you didn't
we're
get
talking
mad
about Aaron
I
Rodgers.
brought up another
and
player.
all I said to you was Patrick Mahomes is that the eye test to me, he doesn't feel like an MVP. That's all.